Hi there, this is Jen, and thanks so much for joining me on the Not Too Shabby channel today. Today I'm working with this really pretty stamp from Colorado Craft Company, and it is called Happy Peony. And I'm going to be doing a little bit of messy watercoloring and then pretty much some no color watercoloring. If you are not a colorist, then this is a perfect video for you. I am definitely not, especially when it comes to markers. And so I thought I'd create a few cards just showing that it doesn't have to be stressful or worrisome, especially with a stamp like this. Is a pretty detailed stamp. It's got a lot of different petals and flowers on it, and these kind of stamps always kind of confuse me. So what's great about this stamp though is that the manufacturer has put the coloring on the packaging, so you can kind of see if you were to color it with markers or with watercolors in a more detailed way, how the stamp should be colored. So that is super helpful. But I'm going to go ahead and I've started with a piece of watercolor paper that's 5.5 by 5.5, and I've stamped that up with the Distress Oxide Scattered Straw. And then I'm just going to do some really simple coloring of the stamp. And so basically what I'm doing is I am taking my Mission watercolors and my paintbrush, and I've watered down that watercolor, which is number 523, in case you have these and you want to know what colors I'm using. And I'm just taking the brush and basically painting the stamp with that color. And that's going to give a really loose watercolor look when I go ahead and stamp that onto my paper. And for reference, so I know where to place the color to get it so that I'm not coloring the whole thing in one color, because there are leaves and some berries on this as well. I'm looking at the image that I have stamped on my paper, and I'm also looking at the packaging that comes with the stamp that has kind of like that black outline where you could see where the details of the stamp are. And so that's what I'm using for reference, so that I have a general idea of where to put the colors. And so I'm going to go ahead and stamp that up first, and then I will clean off that stamp, and then I'm going to add in the yellow, more of the yellow color, and so that is number 522. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to grab my brush. And I forgot to mention, before I stamped the stamp, I did lightly spray my paper, and then I also lightly sprayed the stamp just to make sure it was wet enough to give that impression. It's kind of a balance between how much water to put on and not, so I just lightly spritzed it once each side, because you want enough water to give that loose look, but you don't want so much water that it drowns out all of the detail of the stamp. And so I went ahead and I stamped that color again, and then I'm taking my brush and I'm just pulling out some of the color that has stamped onto the paper. And so I want the color around the edges to go outside of the stamped image to give kind of that really pretty artistic look. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab my color 535, which is a green, and I'm going to go ahead and color up those leaves. And I'm just following the same process that I have followed for the floral piece. And then I'm going to spritz the stamp really lightly and spritz the paper and then stamp the leaves. And I'm going to bring the color out on the leaves as well with my brush. As you can see, it is you can see the lines pretty clearly, and so I want to blur those up a little bit just so that that's the look that I'm going for, is to have more of that kind of artistic loose watercolor where, you know, the details of the image aren't super clear, but you know what it is. So hopefully you know what this is when I'm done with it still. I know what it is because I stamped it and I've been looking at it for a while, but hopefully you can tell that it is some sort of flower or floral arrangement. And then last, I'm going to clean up my stamp again, and I'm going to go in and color up the few little berries that are on the stamp. And for this, I am using number 514. And so I'm going to go ahead and stamp that one up as well. And then from this point on, really it's up to you how you want to complete the flower. I ended up taking my brush and bringing out some of the color. I also went in and took a thinner brush and tried to add a little bit more detail, especially to the berries, but you could leave it like this. I think it looks really pretty like this. You can add more detail. You can let it dry and bring in colored pencils. I mean, really it's up to you and however you want to color this, but this is kind of just the basic or the basis for the first look that I was going for, which is a really loose artistic watercolor look that is super, super easy and no stress and no worrying about getting the details exactly right. Just a really fun technique that is just a lot of fun. I just love this look. And then for the background, I'm going to go ahead and I grabbed number 546 and I'm just putting a little bit of color around the edges, and then I'm going to wet my brush and bring that up and color up the whole piece. And this is a fairly dark blue-gray color when it's just concentrated, but once you use the water to bring that color out, it lightens up a great deal. After I did this, I wasn't so sure that I was in love with it. I really love my white space, and I pretty much took away a lot of that with this color, but I think I was able to get it lightened up enough where I'm okay with it. And then I'm going to add a little bit of black splatter, a little bit of black splatter. So I have watered down some liquid acrylic ink and splattered a little bit of the black on there, which is kind of nerve-wracking after all of that work. I didn't want to ruin it, so I added just a little bit, not too much. And then there's a butterfly stamp in the same stamp set, and so I'm using a blue and a green to paint that butterfly, and I'll go ahead and stamp that up and fussy cut that out. And I'm going to go ahead and mount this panel on a 5 3/4 by 5 3/4 white card base. And so I added a little bit of foam to the back of my card panel and added some adhesive to that, and then I will go ahead and mount that onto that 5 3/4 piece. I went ahead and added the butterfly. I popped that up as well. And then I believe I actually added a little more splatter. I added a little bit of gold splatter, and that's going to finish off the first card. I really like how this turned out. Let me know what you think of this technique, and if you tried it before. If you haven't, I really hope you give it a try. It is so super fun. For the second card, if you blink, you're going to miss it. This was really quick. I actually didn't realize I wasn't recording when I created the panel, so I'm going to show you really quickly how I created the panel. I'm basically just doing a dry wash of color, and so I am grabbing a few colors from my palette, and I'm taking a size 23 round brush, I believe it is, and I'm just taking the color and wetting down the color in the palette and then swiping that over my watercolor cardstock. And so basically that is how I did the panel. And then I'm going to take, these are actually CYS watercolors. They're some of my favorite handmade watercolors, and they are just beautiful, sparkly, metallic gold. I really love these. And so I'm just taking the paintbrush and swiping down a little bit of that gold, and I also do a splatter. So back to the panel that I originally created for this. I'm just stamping the, or inking the stamp up with some VersaFine black, and then I'm taking some clear embossing powder and covering that, and then I'm going to heat set that with my heat tool. And then to finish the card off, I stamped the sentiment and then mounted it on a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 black card panel, and that's going to finish off that card. I hope you give these a try. It's super fun. And if you do try this, don't forget to post your creations in the Facebook group. I will leave links below to all the social media for the Not Too Shabby shop, as well as links to the products I used. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please go ahead and give a thumbs up. And I hope to catch you next time. Thanks so much for joining me.